this is Jessica with Dining Traveler, and welcome to my kitchen, well, my borrowed kitchen. I am at 10K Hill South, this gorgeous new apartment building in Washington, D.C., because my kitchen is currently undergoing renovations. As I mentioned in the beginning of the year, I wanted to talk about some easy recipes, and one of my go-tos is cauliflower soup. I learned to make cauliflower soup around 10 years ago when I was living in Brussels, and it's become my go-to recipe, especially when I'm having dinner parties as a first course, or now that we're spending more time at home, I make it for lunch. And the great part is that it has a high yield with one cauliflower, and you can reheat it and use it for the rest of the week, so it's good for meal prep. So let's get started. Now we're gonna get the vegetables ready. We're gonna chop the onions and cut the cauliflower into small florets. This onion is pretty big, so I'm just gonna use half of it. Just chop it coarsely. It doesn't have to be perfect because it's going to go into the blender. Now we are going to cut the cauliflower into small florets. So the way I like to do it is grab the knife and go through the base and around, you see, and the florets start coming off. And voila, it comes out super easy. And then just take them apart. So now that we cut the florets into small pieces, we want them to be somewhere around here, even a little bit smaller. The smaller, the quicker they're gonna cook in the broth. And make sure that you reserve 3 to 4 florets around this size, because what we're gonna do is chop them into tiny little florets, fry them, and use them as garnish at the end. We're gonna add the butter now and let it melt. Now the butter is melted, we are gonna add the chopped onions, and we are gonna cook until soft and fragrant, and that's gonna be around 2 to 3 minutes. I love the smell of butter and onions, like obsessed. I love how it fills up the whole room, and it's just like a nice warm hug. If you're vegan, don't worry. You can also use plant butter, olive oil, that will also work, and just use a vegetable broth. Now it's been around 3 minutes, and the onions are nice, translucent, soft, and we are gonna add the florets. Now the cauliflower is in the pan with the onions, and I like to keep it there for a few minutes just to let it caramelize. And I actually got this tip from Michel Roux, a famous Michelin star chef, and I met him many years ago when I was starting with food writing, and I remember being at a lunch and I sat next to him, and I think because I didn't know who he was, I was very casual in asking him all these cooking tips, but that was one of the tips he gave me for the cauliflower soup. The other tip that he gave me was about frying the florets. So I always love to tell that story because it makes me feel super cultured. See, they're a bit browned. That's what we want. Have that flavor really come out with the butter and the onions. And with the broth, what I like to do, I like to start with 4 cups. Again, when you go to the supermarket, cauliflower, different sizes. Sometimes you get this huge cauliflower, this tiny cauliflower, but the trick is not to add too much water. You just want enough to cover the cauliflower. If not, the soup is just gonna come out too runny. So you just wanted to lightly cover the cauliflower, and then we're just gonna cover it and let it cook for around 15 minutes. While the cauliflower is cooking, we are gonna make the garnish, and we're gonna cut the florets into itty bitty pieces and fry them in a little olive oil, make them nice and crispy, and they make the perfect garnish for the soup, and it makes it look way more fancier than what it really is. It's been around 15 minutes, and now the florets are nice and soft and ready to go to the blender. So we have the cauliflower in the blender, and I have a hot soup setting in mind, but if you don't, that's fine. Just start slow and gradually up the speed, because if you start too fast, again, it's just gonna make a mess. We don't want that. I definitely don't want that in this beautiful, pristine kitchen. That is not mine. The soup is fully blended, is nice and creamy, and this is why I don't like to add too much broth, because if you add too much broth, the soup is watery. I just kind of like that nice thick consistency, not as thick as a puree, but somewhere in between I am going to put the soup now in the pot, and what we're gonna do is we're just gonna cook it really quick, just 1 to 2 minutes, very low heat. You don't wanna put it high heat because it's gonna splatter, because it's already, especially if it's still hot from the blender, you don't wanna put it in high heat. Another thing I did before putting the soup back into the pot, I rinsed out the pot. Sometimes there's just a few little pieces of cauliflower stick around. I like my soup nice and smooth, so we're just gonna add it back to the saucepan. And the consistency is beautiful, is nice and thick, perfect to serve. And the good thing about the thickness that I like is that once you add those toasted florets, it just looks so beautiful because they just like sit right on top. If it's too thin, they're just gonna sink to the bottom. Put a little olive oil. We are gonna fry the little florets. I don't know why, but this is my favorite part. Just make sure that you are twirling them around, make sure it's evenly coated with the oil so they can get nice and crispy, and make sure you keep an eye on these. I do like medium to low heat because it goes really fast. It goes from, oh, it's not cooked till it's burned in a matter of seconds. We're gonna plate the soup. We're gonna start with olive oil. I like to use a flavored olive oil. Today I'm using the Chipotle olive oil from some of my favorite people, Laconico. Then I'm gonna sprinkle some freshly ground black pepper and then add the tiny fried florets. And this is how we make cauliflower soup at Casa Dining Traveler, or in this case, borrowed Casa Dining Traveler. Thank you to the team at 10K Hill South for letting us borrow their beautiful kitchen. And I hope that you guys enjoy it. If you have any questions or feedback, please leave it in the comments. And don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe. Bye.